Good evening, and welcome to the final Tuesday. Let me get real with y'all. The final Tuesday of every month is my favorite Tuesday of the month, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, we do our Howard University Mental Health Show on the final Tuesday of the month, and so I would like to get to know about our mentals. So go check out that series we're doing there. But also on the final Tuesday, the fourth Tuesday every month, we do our Seeing Eye to Eye broadcast, and that's what you're here watching tonight. So let me introduce myself. I am Ellis Dean, the Director of Programming at blackdoctor.org. And this is Seeing Eye to Eye. And this is our series, our monthly series in conjunction, in partnership with the Children's Vision Equity Alliance, as well as Prevent Blindness and the National Eye Institute at the National Institutes of Health. A lot of alphabet soup, but there are some very, very brilliant people that are here all about your eye health. And so this program, we have wonderful practitioners and physicians that come in and talk about everything related to eye health. And I know we don't think about our vision, we think about our body health, we think about diabetes, hypertension, also, but we don't think about our vision. People don't think about our vision until it is gone or till we're losing it. Then it becomes very, very important. So this series and this program is all about your eye health. So before we get to tonight's topic and you get to meet tonight's wonderful guests, a couple of things I need for you to do for me. Number one, I need you to let us know where you're watching from, all over the world, all over the country. Please drop your city and state in the comments and we will give you a shout out. Number two, if you know somebody that needs this information, please tag them or share this on your page. We cannot get this information out without your help. So we need you to get it out to as many people as possible. And then number three, if you have any questions about what we're talking about tonight, also please drop those in the comments and we will try to get to as many questions as we can, because this show is all about you and getting you the information that you need. So I think I have said a mouthful. So let's get to our fantastic guests this evening. First off, we have Dr. Lisa Kelly. She is a full professor of ophthalmology at the University of Cincinnati, where she holds the Taylor Asbury Endowed Professorship of Ophthalmology. She is a medical director of the University Cincinnati Ophthalmology Clinics, as well as the director of medical student education. Dr. Kelly received her medical degree from Harvard Medical School. All right, I need to sit up when I say that. Harvard Medical School, and went on to residency in ophthalmology at Stanford Medical School. Wow, that's a bad sister. I tried to tell y'all, it's a bad sister. And as a Heed Fellow, completed a fellowship in cornea and external diseases at the Harvard Massachusetts Eye and Ear Infirmary. She also holds a master's degree in academic leadership from the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Wow. Dr. Kelly, welcome.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Dr. Essence Johnson, and she is an HBCU maid. Shout out to my HBCUs out there. It's homecoming season. You know what it is. Residency trained community and correctional health optometrist. She earned her Doctor of Optometry degree from the Pennsylvania College of Optometry at Salus University, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and completed a residency in ocular disease at Omni Eye Services of Atlanta. She is also a fellow of the American Academy of Optometry and a diplomat in the American Board of Optometry. A champion for diversity, equity, and inclusion, Dr. Johnson received certifications in this area from Cornell University and the University of South Florida, Mama College of Business. So welcome, Dr. Johnson. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having us.
Well, y'all are some accomplished people. I'm like, good gosh. Okay. All right. I need to step my game up. Why are you playing? All right. So first question. So tonight's topic, we're talking about, so you want to be an eye doctor. So this is kind of a slight departure from our previous programmers, because we talked about eye health and fireworks. We talked about playing sports and kid eye health and glaucoma. But tonight we're going to talk about those people that want to be an eye doctor, or what that journey was like to become an eye doctor. So my first question is for you, Dr. Kelly, and it's really for both of you, but we'll start with you, Dr. Kelly. How did you get interested in eye care? And why did you want to become an optometrist or ophthalmologist? And can you both remind us what are the differences between ophthalmologists and optometrists?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Dean, for having me on the show. This is so exciting to be here. And one of my favorite topics is to talk about healthcare and how people make their career decisions. And for me, I was the first person in my family to go to medical school. So when I started medical school, I really didn't know much about the different options in terms of what a person could specialize in. I had done a lot of work as an undergraduate in college in health disparities. And so I thought I would just be a general medical doctor because that's what I knew. And in medical school, to be an ophthalmologist, you go to medical school for 4 years. The first 2 years, you take biochemistry and anatomy and all the things in the lab. And the second 2 years is when you really actually go on to the wards and you take care of patients and you get to know what it's really like to be a doctor. And so when I went on the wards, I thought it'd be a good idea to learn a little bit about eyes since I was going to be a general medical doctor. And when I got on the ward and saw how beautiful the instruments were that we could examine the eyes and see so much, and the surgeries, when I was with one of my doctors, when I was a student there, he did a cataract surgery on the patient. And the patient couldn't see the day before. And when they took the bandage off, she was laughing and crying and hugging the doctor all at the same time. And I had never seen anything like that in medicine before. And I knew I needed to do that. The hardest thing for me was I had never seen an African-American woman ophthalmologist in my life. And so I was embarking down a road that I had never seen anybody who looked like me go down. So that is how I came to ophthalmology.
Dr. Johnson.
For me, just finding out about optometry, a lot of people normally are triggered by that first eye exam or getting glasses. And I've been wearing glasses since the 4th grade, and that for me isn't what triggered it. I would say for a very long time, I wanted to be a lawyer until one day my grandmother told me that I was going to go to hell for lying. So that is what triggered me to start looking into other just professions and other options because I was sold on, the law school track. Having had a friend in middle school, her dad was our family optometrist. So then that started getting me a little bit more interested just in the profession. And later on in my journey, he was very instrumental in just like interning and learning. And like Dr. Kelly said, being in the lab and cutting lenses and just interacting with patients. But I think the moment that sealed it for me was going to a career day after my grandmother had told me to find a new career path. And that was my first experience of seeing a Black doctor who happened to also be a Black female optometrist. And having that interaction with her, seeing her at the career fair, my little memory, I remember going into the lawyer room. It was so dark. I go into the other room with her and she was like an angel in a white coat, bright, light, just sharing the joys of the profession, sharing the flexibility that she had with her family, the diversity that she had, and just the way that she could practice and the things that she could do for the community. And then she took it a step further, where it wasn't just my last encounter at that career fair. She became a very integral part of the journey as well, helping me, sort through the different schools, being a part of just the personal statement process, in addition to writing those letters of recommendation. And so it was very transformative to see someone in your likeness in gender and in race, but then to also have someone take you under your wing, my home doctor, and then meeting her, really having those influences really is what motivated and kept me on the path. And I would just say, just as we talk about optometry and ophthalmology, over the years, I have doing a residency, things of that nature, really been able to be immersed on both sides of eye care. And working in a hospital system, we work very intimately with our ophthalmologists. There is a very close synergy and system in referring patients and co-managing patients and knowing how you treat and diagnose and communicating with the ophthalmology team on what types of procedures, like that cataract procedure Dr. Kelly has said. And I got to do a lot of that. When you said cataracts, I think of my time at Omni. There was a lot of early mornings with a lot of cataract surgeries, and it is very phenomenal to see someone come in unable to see, and then in the matter of, hours of the surgery, be able to see clearly.
Well, you're both very inspiring. And so Dr. Kelly, I had imagined that had to be, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what was that like, not knowing any eye doctors of color and saying, oh, I want to be in this space. I'm going to be a pioneer in this space.
I think Dr. Johnson kind of alluded to the value of mentorship and having people to guide you along. There's a pathway, there's a sequence of things that one needs to do. And in ophthalmology, the pathway is that one does 4 years of medical school where one becomes really a general physician. And during those last 2 years of medical school, one begins to decide whether they're going to specialize in the heart, the lungs, or the eyes. And when one decides to go into the eyes, then after that, a person does 4 years of training in doing surgery and fitting glasses, in treating with topical medical medications for various conditions like glaucoma, doing surgeries for cataracts. And there's a process that one goes through. And as Dr. Johnson mentioned, it is so very valuable to have mentorship to guide you and support you along that way. And so I'm very engaged in mentorship because, to tell the truth, I didn't receive the level of mentorship that I hope students would be able to receive today. So I'm very engaged in doing that to make sure that students get that type of support and mentorship, because you're absolutely right. It's essential.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, you are really a great example of what you can do. So I think it's for Dr. Johnson, but can you share the inspiration behind the Minority Ophthalmology, maybe that's just for you, Dr. Kelly, mentoring program and the Black Eye Care Perspective, and what specific goals or milestones you hope to achieve in terms of increasing diversity in your fields?
So I'll start off with the Minority Ophthalmology Mentoring Program. It's a program that's sponsored by the American Academy of Ophthalmology. It was started in 2016 as a pilot program by Dr. Keith Carter and Dr. Mildred Olivier, they were both on the board of trustees. Dr. Carter, former president of the Academy of Ophthalmology, and they realized a couple of things. First of all, what many of us already know is that African-American patients do better. They have better outcomes when they have African-American physicians. In ophthalmology, there is a lack of diversity. Compared to other surgical specialties, we rank towards the bottom in terms of diversity. So they took it on as a mission in 2016 to create a mentoring program that would recruit, encourage, and nurture students in medical school, expose them to ophthalmology, and give them the support necessary to continue on that path. And they presented that program to the Board of Trustees of the Academy of Ophthalmology, and they have embraced it. And the program has continued to grow over the last year since 2016. And it has really been wonderful for those who have participated in it as mentors. We have learned a lot, as well as done a lot to support students and bring students who might not otherwise have been exposed to ophthalmology to it early in their medical school career.
It's, as an aside, I had the opportunity of going to LA recently and touring, spending a day at Charles Drew Medical School, and they had their first year medical students, and I met one just randomly because I was being forward, and I just stopped him. Hey, what year are you? First year? What are you interested in? And he happened to be interested in eye care, in becoming an ophthalmologist. And so immediately, because of this space and this role that I have, I was like, oh, I've got somebody perfect. I Dr. Joseph Coney. And so I reached out to Dr. Coney and said, hey, there's a young man, first year, he's interested in becoming an ophthalmologist. You'd be willing to kind of give him some pointers? And he said, sure. So I connected them via email. So to that point, you don't always have to be, I'm telling to the audience, you don't always have to be an ophthalmologist in order, if you know one, if you know somebody, if you have the position to be able to find a mentor for somebody, then please do that, even if it's not you, because I couldn't tell them about being an ophthalmologist, but I know an ophthalmologist. And so I was like, let me connect you to, and hopefully that young man continues and finishes medical school and goes on to his residency.
Well, thank you for doing that. Right now, I have the privilege of serving as the chair of the executive committee for the Minority Ophthalmology Mentoring Program for the Academy of Ophthalmology. And what really encouraged me to step into that role is a young woman that I encountered in an elevator at my college. And I always am trying to encourage people to go into ophthalmology. And she said, no, I think that's too hard for me. I don't think I would be able to do that. And I said, come on in my office. Let's talk. And the opportunity to do that on a larger scale. So thank you for doing that work in Los Angeles when you were down there.
Well, I appreciate that. Dr. Johnson.
No, I think to all of this point, the reality is that we do need more Black doctors. We need more Black professionals. We need, more students to believe that they can do it, and definitely having ourselves, me, Dr. Kelly, other optometrists and ophthalmologists that are out there, and just other doctors in the profession, really helps show students that they too can be a doctor. But I think even more importantly for eye care, we need to have increased representation of our profession. A lot of times when people are thinking of a doctor, optometry and ophthalmology does not make it to the top of the list. And that was a lot of the inspiration behind Black Eye Care Perspective, where we are on a mission to redefine the color of the eye care industry 1% at a time by creating this pipeline of students into our profession, into the eye care industry, but also that continual connection and community as they become a doctor. So the process just doesn't end. To that, we started the first virtual pre-optometry club that is open to students across the nation. So we started back in 2020, and it has now grown to over 200 students in 2023. And it is our vessel, our vehicle for community and mentorship, because students need to be given the correct tools and resources. And a lot of times what we have noticed is just kind of ill advising or just poor advising, not to any malintent, but just not knowing that optometry school, you can go into it after getting a 4-year bachelor's degree. There are some schools that you don't need your bachelor's degree, and as long as you have those prerequisites, a lot of the same that you need for medical school, the biologies, the chemistries, the physics, you take your optometry admissions test and you can apply to optometry school. So just being able to lay that foundation and groundwork to show people this is the path. The path isn't much different from entering ophthalmology or even dentistry or pharmacy, that all of healthcare, the entry point is the same. Then that next step is that once you're in that system and you're going through, you need a lot of help and support throughout that application process. Once you get into school, then you need all the support and prayers and love and sometimes meals and gifts to get you through school. And we have been able to really build a more robust community for our students, find ways to get out into the community, visiting our historically Black colleges and universities to share information about the profession, allow them to see people who have walked a very similar path with all kinds of twists and turns to even become into that, but also to raise that awareness, importance of just eye care in general, that we need more doctors of diverse backgrounds so that they can go into these diverse places, so that, my father, your mother, brothers and sisters can get the care that they need in the areas that they live in by having more doctors go into those areas that they serve. So that has been a lot of our inspiration for forming Black Eye Care Perspective, really has come from our own journeys. We were those students. We were, more specifically, those Black students that may have been discouraged or disparaged along the way. And we, like Dr. Kelly said, we want the mentorship that we did not get. And we have that opportunity to be that series of change, to not just keep repeating broken cycles, to teach people the things that they don't know to ask, or that we know that they wouldn't know because we did not know that. And we want to see our profession get great talent. We want people to know that they can do it too. And then we also want to, improve the quality of care that just our communities in general are receiving.
Well, that's fantastic. I think two things came to mind when you're providing answers. Number one, I was like, that African proverb, it does take a village, right? It takes a whole village to wrap around and teach the students what they need to know, give them what they need to know. And the second thing I'm thinking about is when you talked about challenges, and that's where I kind of want to shift the conversation to, what are some of those challenges that students of color are maybe facing when they're choosing to step out into ophthalmology or optometry as a profession? Talk to some of those challenges, and then I'm always like, let's talk about what we can do to help them overcome these challenges.
I would say some things that kind of get overlooked, like, of course, we can talk about just the racial challenges that we may have, or just even getting into the entry point. But I think it's important to note too, like for optometry school right now, there are only like 23, 24 schools across the nation. And even with ophthalmology, not every medical school has an ophthalmology program. So we have very limited kind of areas to choose from. And I think a lot of times, someone like myself, I was born and raised in Southern California. We do have some optometry schools in Southern California, but in California in general, I ended up going to school clear across the country, intentionally so, to Pennsylvania. And not every student adapts very well to going across the whole United States to go to school. So I think sometimes some of those challenges are just in taking that first step, but then now physically the move itself. I grew up in a space where going to Prairie View was really my first opportunity of being around a very majorly Black environment. So a lot of people ask me, like, how was it, kind of going into optometry school that isn't always predominantly or majority Black? And for me, there wasn't a lot of struggle in that, because I came from a place where I was used to being the only one. But I am starting to see, especially with the students in our club, that's a little bit different situation and scenario. They grow up in a lot more diverse world, or they live in places that are more majority Black, even if it's their particular city. So then moving across the nation and then going to an optometry school that is not majority Black is a bit of a culture shock, and it takes some of that adaptation and just adjustment into it. Then it's just that general maturing and transitioning from going from high school, undergrad to professional school. Professional school requires a different level of discipline that sometimes we have to learn it while we're there. And that is why mentorship is very important, to kind of help teach you those ropes so that you're not having to learn by trial and error, because sometimes we can't afford to have any errors, especially in terms of academics or other areas. And I think the other part that comes up a lot is that when you're entering into these professional schools, a lot of time, school is all we've ever known. A majority of the people are normally in their 20s, and there's just sometimes just unforeseen life challenges that we have not experienced once you're going into it. For me personally, when I was in optometry school, I went into optometry school knowing that my mother was chronically ill. She had cancer. And I went into knowing that throughout that 4 years, there was no guarantee that my mother was going to see me graduate. As a matter of fact, my mother told me entering into optometry school that she would not be at my optometry school graduation. and she passed away during my 3rd year. So those were things that I had to navigate.
Mm.
And it was the support of my class village and my school village and just all of my village in keeping me still motivated and on top to continue to pursue a plan and continue to live life when I've lost a very important person in my own. So there are a lot of, kind of indirect and direct things that happen during this 4 years or 4+ year journey, that sometimes we don't account for because we're always looking at like the typical day-to-day challenges or anticipating, the challenges that we may just have because of just who we are and who we show up to be.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Kelly, let's shift. So, I see the passion and the motivation the two of you have towards mentorship and creating the next generation of optometrists and ophthalmologists. It's one thing for you to have personal passion. It's another thing to get organizations and other people to move and to work with you on your passion projects. And so, how do we do that? How do we get our educational institutions, our associations and affiliations to buy in to that, to the need that we know is there, but how do we get them to buy into the need for us in our community?
Oh, thank you for that question. I think it really starts out with what Dr. Johnson said, which is for us to understand what those barriers are. And I agree entirely. It's a long road. It's a long road. And in ophthalmology, it takes some early preparation to go down that road. And if you're not thinking about ophthalmology, some of the key things that you need to do, you might not do them in the timeline that is appropriate to apply, unless somebody lets you know that this is the game plan. We can all do it if we know the rule book, right? We know the
Right.
game book, we can
Right.
do it. And the other thing is, if you don't see people who look like you, it feels like the welcome wagon, the welcome mat is not out for you. It feels like a place that is unsafe, unwise for you to go into. And then having the support, as Dr. Johnson mentioned, who supports you both academically and in your personal life as you go along this journey. How do you put those things in place? And just having that roadmap. So we get really clear about what it is we need to help people to be successful on this path. In terms of talking to organizations, we talk to them in a language that they understand, which is metrics, right? And here's what we know in ophthalmology. Here's what we know for sure is the demographics of this country is becoming increasingly multicultural. We are becoming more diverse as a society. We also know that older people use more eye care than younger people. We are becoming older as a society. And so the disparities that we already see, which are substantial, from diabetic retinopathy to glaucoma to burden of cataract, they are all substantial right now. And we know that the trajectory is for it to become more pronounced over time.
Right.
We also know that people have better outcomes when they are treated by people who look like them, particularly African American people. And so when we go to different organizations, we point out the disparities that already exist. We point out how the changing demographics will make it even worse. And then we have data on the diversity or lack of diversity that exists in our specialty. And all of those things brought together paints a picture that people who are interested in the well-being of the specialty, they can understand. And we found that that has been a very useful way to bring allies in to support us in an institutional, organizational approach to mentoring.
That's fantastic. So if you're just joining us, we are talking to Dr. Lisa Kelly and Dr. Essence Johnson. And this is our Seeing Eye to Eye program. It's our monthly program that we do. We're in partnership with the Children's Vision Equity Alliance, CVEA, as well as our partners at Prevent Blindness and the National Eye Institute at the National Institutes of Health. And these are two of the most accomplished, and it's always a proud moment for me. I'm going to take a little moment of personal privilege here to see practitioners that look like me, that look like my mother, that looks like my grandmother, that looks like my aunt and my sister to come up there. It is a point of personal pride because I know the challenges, right? And I don't know what it's like to be a woman or a Black woman, and so in that space, there's a different set of challenges as a Black man, but we're all facing challenges. And you're right, there is a playbook, right? And it never seems to make it to my house. And I'm waiting for it to come to the mail. And so to have somebody that has cracked the code and then say, hey, look, no, this is how you do it, is vitally important to increase the number of physicians of color, particularly in our communities, because as you know, I mean, diabetic retinopathy is because diabetes is huge, right? It's not because people don't take care of health, it's just because diabetes is a big thing. And for y'all folks, I learned from Dr. Coney last week, diabetes can impact your cataracts. It can cause them to form early. They can form earlier if you have uncontrolled diabetes. So if you have diabetes, you're watching this program, get it under control because it can start your cataracts early, as well as you can get to retinopathy and have, what is it, macular edema. I learned a lot of big words. So, in this whole process. And so it becomes very, very problematic. But the bottom line is this, and so Dr. Kelly talked about the numbers. The bottom line is this: vision loss. You can reduce your life expectancy by anywhere from 5 to 10 years just by losing your vision, because there is a significant hindrance on your quality of life, and that can include mental health issues, and that shortens the lifespan. And so do not wait until you start having vision problems, particularly if you're diabetic. But even if you don't, at the age of 40, if you have 20/20 vision beginning at the age of 40, you should start seeing an ophthalmologist on an annual basis. And then if you wear glasses, you need to see an optometrist on a regular basis to make sure your prescription doesn't need to be updated, because you can't be wearing the same glasses that you wore when you was 20-something and you in your 40s. I mean, come on now. You ain't got to say amen. You can say ouch if I'm hitting you hard. So that notwithstanding, let's talk about some success stories. So Dr. Johnson, tell us some success stories about the work that you've been doing. I hear about your social media, and I love the fact that you've incorporated social media, because we know this generation and the generations that follow social media is part of their lives. Some of us of a certain age don't know about it. We know about it, but it's not part of our DNA. But I know my children, that hand is permanently formed like this to hold the phone, and it's part of who they are. And so I love the fact that you did that. So talk about some of the success stories that you're having in terms of mentoring and ushering the next generation of eyes.
No, I would agree. Social media, I am just kind of dabbling in it myself, but it is a very powerful tool, especially during the pandemic. It has been amazing the amount of people that you can reach because of leveraging social media. When we started the Pre-Optometry Club, that is how it kind of started. There were so many students, partly probably because of the pandemic, that did not have that access to go and shadow doctors or to get the information that they needed. So I think all of us during that time turned to social media. And there are a lot of the people in the club, I always say we were pen pals. We did a lot of kind of blind mentoring, blind dating during the pandemic. So now that the world is open and we can all be outside, it's been amazing to connect with all of the students. I think when we think of things that, yes, partnering with organizations help amplify the voice and the mission, but I don't want anyone to discount like the power of the individual and the power of one. It has been very amazing to see, the analytics that don't get measured in social media, to see those true social, personal analytics, to say that I remember the day that this person slid into my DM, or I saw someone saying, who's a Black doctor, and I volunteered myself as tribute, and we started this relationship. and to now be, 3, 4 years later, and to have students that you met them, in the infancy, and even meeting students even earlier past that. Like, we have students even in high school, which the further we can get, I tell them, I have 2 young children, if we can get them in preschool or straight out the womb, this is when we need to be showing them the playbook,
Right.
ordering their steps and letting them know what classes and things like that. So it's been very amazing to see someone's journey, to know the intricacies and the struggles that they face, to know the role that you've played, in helping them overcome and understand those things. And then seeing someone get their white coat, seeing someone, in that first day of clinic, and you knew they were bumbling and fumbling with all of those cool toys that we have, where they had their condensing lens backwards and they didn't understand the ophthalmoscope. So it's been very interesting to just see that evolution. And then to now, our first group of students, they're on rotation. I'm like, how are you already out on rotation? In optometry school, most people get to go during their 3rd year. So they're almost at the finish line. They're over here talking about our board exams. And just such a very sense of pride as an auntie, a mama, however it is, just to be like, wow, remember when, you thought you were counted out. Remember when you didn't pass that admissions test and you had to pivot or just wait a year and things worked out for the better. Remember when, so those are the biggest success stories. My friend, Dr. Cleaver, he'll say it never gets old when we get like a text or a message and someone's like, hey, guess what? I scored this on my test, or hey, I just got into this school, or hey, this is the day that I graduate. It is a very proud moment as a professional to bring more people into your profession, to share that love and passion, but to also know that you've been a part of someone's lives. And a lot of times you're like, if I can touch one person, I now have so many mentees, I don't even know what to do with them. We need more mentors, to help engage, and that people don't have to just have one, mentor, and people don't have to just balance one mentee, but to be able to share in those journeys and stories, to be able now, because of social media, to go visit these campuses where before, we were introducing ourselves. Now we have a legacy and we have a reputation where people are like, come to my school next. We saw what you did, working with this organization and bringing, mobile clinics, or just coming to talk, or making sure that we share, just our school affiliations. Seeing other people were like, oh, the HBCU connection, or we went to this school together, or I'm from, Southern California too. How do I get there? So I think that's where a lot of the pride and success is. And then being able to garner the attention and the support of more organizations in our industry, and even outside of the industry, that are like, we see the work that is being done. We understand, how, I think it's important to note, like, as Black people, we do like to try to find Black doctors, but the reality is, it is a daunting task for every Black doctor to see every Black patient. There are more Black patients than there are Black doctors. So really,
Right. Say that again for the people in the back.
there are more Black patients than there are Black doctors. I did some calculation in math. Me and Dr. Kelly would have to see like 5,000 people a month in order to help examine every single Black patient that there is. So being able to do things like this to educate also our community, right, to get them, one, to prioritize their eye health. Like you said, diabetes is something an optometrist and an ophthalmologist can see and diagnose and co-manage. And getting that eye exam, there's many times where people have come into my chair, had an eye exam, and I was able to tell them that their breast cancer has returned. I was able to, help prevent them from losing vision, or help them manage, what vision loss may be because of diabetes or these other conditions. So there is it does hit sometimes a little different when you're sitting in a chair with someone that looks like you, because we just naturally have that ability, and that is one of our superpowers and privileges. But it does not make an excuse for our colleagues to not be able to treat and to educate and to diagnose in the same manner too, because there are not enough Black doctors for every Black patient. So being able to just get that message out and to touch people on the patient community aspect is a huge success and a win too as well. And just seeing us increase that literacy and kind of dissuade some of that fear that has been ingrained into us is also a very powerful moment too.
You're bringing up a point because my profession before I got into this was mental health, and so they families, especially when I worked with children, the families were always, oh, there's a black man. So I had my patients, and the thing I tell people, and because mental health has now really become to the forefront, particularly during the pandemic, and more people are being kind of compelled to seek counseling and therapy, and more often than not, they're going to get a therapist that's not of color. Mm-hmm. And the challenge is not because they're not trained well, from my perspective. It's because you have to educate them on your life and get them not only to understand it, but believe it's real. Mm-hmm. Whereas when they sit across from me, we've already accelerated that because there is a general understanding that your experience has been very, very similar to mine. And so the belief is already there. Now we're going to talk about your specific circumstances that is influencing how that is impacting your mental health. But I don't have to educate you on what it means to be Black in America before I can even get to me. And that unspoken connection, when I sit down and I see a doctor of color come in, and it's almost like a silent, yes, okay, so I don't have to worry about just the questioning, and then even if I do show I know a little something, they go, oh, you must be different because most of the Black patients are like this. And so we have to kind of get beyond the stigmas. We do have to, step into our superpowers, and that's what both of you are doing outside of your practice. I learned that ophthalmologists, there's 9 different specialties in eye health, 9. So you can find your niche in anywhere with regards to becoming an eye doctor, and we need more. So, Dr. Kelly, you have been, when I was giving your introduction, in some of the most prestigious institutions in this country: Harvard, Stanford, Johns Hopkins. What is it like to be in those spaces? And how do we get more Lisa Kellys in those spaces?
Well, I just have to come back to something that Dr. Johnson said that I can't leave, which is the power of one, and what you said, Mr. Dean, about the power of community. Yeah. And it is powerful, the power of one. And I too feel so privileged to have been in the lives of the students that I have mentored. Their successes feel like my success. And so as I talk about things that are institutional and bigger things like that, and numbers and things, to always come back to the power of one and being able to support and influence and encourage into another. The other thing that I would like to comment on is absolutely, there are unfortunately not enough African-American doctors to see all of the African-American patients. But when we are in the room, conversations change.
Yes.
And so it would be lovely, and that's my goal, is that there are enough African-American doctors for all African-American patients who want African-American doctors. But until that time, when we are in the room, biases that exist, we bring them to light. Well-meaning people who just never thought of a thing, we are attuned to and sensitive to. And so even though our numbers are not as big, it's still powerful. And talking about numbers in general and successes, not to get too far into numbers, but the African American community is, depending on who's looking, around 13%, 12 to 13%. When you look at medical schools, it's in the range of 7 to 8%. So you can see the disparity is right there at day one of medical school. In 2018, the percent of people, African Americans, who were applying into ophthalmology was under 3%. We were under 3%. And our MOM program has been in place. And last year in 2023, our number was 7%. So we went from under 3% to 7%. And about 40% of the people who matched, and that's what we call it when people go from medical school and then decide to go into ophthalmology and have a residency program to select them. They match into a program. About 40% of the students who are underrepresented minorities who matched last year came through our MOM program. So we can focus and move the needle, but these are baby steps and they're very vulnerable. So we don't take anything for granted. It is proof of concept, but we have so much work left to do.
Yeah.
So much.
Well, I'm celebrating your successes right now. And I know you're going to wrap your arms around those students that matched, make sure that they finish their residency, and go out and become that next generation. And if I could add, go into areas, I know Atlanta is sexy. I know New York. I know the big cities. I know. Come on, Black folks. I live in Atlanta. I know what it is. I get it. But there's Black folks everywhere. There's Black folks in Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, in some rural areas that need that care, probably more so than people that live in larger cities, right? Because when you look at, we talked about diabetes tonight, you look at where the center of where most diabetics are residing, it's the Southeast, right? And they're not in states with really sexy cities, Mississippi, Louisiana, besides New Orleans, Alabama. So some of us got to roll up our sleeves and go into those communities, and because there's a great need there. There's need here in the city. I can tell you some spots here in Atlanta, but there's some need, and so we need doctors that look like you all everywhere where there's people of color. So that's my plea. There's some resources that I put in the comment section for people that want to know more about the Black eye care perspective. So there's the website there, so you can find out and maybe even join the group. And even if you're not looking to get it, numbers, right? We need those numbers because that encouragement, that just says you can do it, can go a long way. And just looking at somebody and giving them their flowers, giving them just that verbal support, patting them on the back and say, I know it's hard. Come on, get a cooked meal. Okay? Come get a cooked meal. Let me take some of this off of your plate because I know the task that's been presented to you. That goes a long way in helping that student finish. Go, study a little bit longer. Because Dr. Johnson talked about it earlier. Discipline is discipline to get through. You need it, and it's a different level. Grad school is a different level, and you're talking about especially like optometry and ophthalmology and medical school. It's a different level of discipline that you have to get through, and that's where a lot of us get lost. In that is that we're not told the type and how to get that playbook to finish all the way through. So y'all are just so amazing. I could talk to you two all night. But I know we're getting close to the end of our time here, so I want to make sure that we get to our final question. Is kind of be more. It's going to be a two-parter. So first thing I want both of you to do is share some advice for students interested in entering optometry or ophthalmology. So that's first thing, and then finally, if there's something that you wanted to say tonight that didn't get a chance to say, tack that on to the end of your statements as we're closing here tonight. And parents, if you're watching, if you got a child that's in high school, if you've got a grade school child, say, oh, they're not thinking about possession. Let me tell you something. 4th grade, they've got Fourth grade, by your aptitude test in the fourth grade, they can determine what your life is going to be. They have a projection, and the projections are pretty accurate based on the fourth grade aptitude test. Okay, so if your child is in grade school, if they're interested in science and math, encourage that. Buy them that kit. Yeah, I got my son a ball too. I got him in football, basketball. He played all the sports, but I also got him a book, right? So encourage all of what they want to do, what they're good at, not just what they see, because they don't see Dr. Kelly's and Dr. Johnson's every day, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist. And so encourage that early on in life, as early in life as possible, when they start showing some sort of aptitude towards science and math. But we'll start with you, Dr. Johnson, since we asked the first question to Dr. Kelly. We're going to ask the final first question to you, Dr. Johnson.
No, thank you for that. What you said really triggers into just that power of influence as well. I would say that the one thing that we didn't get to share, or if it didn't come across, share this information, with everyone. If you are a school teacher, let's educate about healthcare, but let's also not forget how diverse healthcare is. I work with high school students now. I work with actually K through 12 students now. And it's always amazing to hear, that what they know about healthcare is, I want to be a doctor. Okay, that's great. But then what type of doctor? Like Dr. Kelly said, when you get into med school, sometimes your specialty chooses you if you don't get the specialty that you want to choose. The same thing with our other allied health professions. There are other professions than just what some people may generally categorize as just being a doctor or being a nurse. So it is definitely our jobs to help educate that, influence that. I'm always encouraging our colleagues, be that mentor, take that little bit of time off and be at those career days, because if students don't have that representation, because we are that representation. So if we aren't the ones going to the career day, don't think somebody else is going to be going to that career day for us. We are those eye care professionals that they need to see. And I agree. It is so important giving your children, and just children in general, very diverse experiences, because my kids do have the Dr. Kellys in their life and Johnsons and just other professionals. It's always very interesting at 5 and 7 to hear them role play, or with other kids, their way of playing or the things that they want to emulate is very different. My son is very much into firefighters. So any chance I get, to the point that he's probably sick of it, even at 5, I put him in front of opportunities. I get him the books when there are activities to do, but also show him career exploration in all types of ways. So it's always interesting to hear when you have, a friend's mom who is a realtor and a doctor and a presenter and this, like, they understand all of those dynamics. And I think even more so for our girls sometimes, to show that you can be empowered and powerful. So to that other end, it's interesting to hear them play. And my son always gets stuck at home with the baby dolls and the kids, and all the girls, they go out and be bosses and they go to work because those are the examples that they see. So that power of giving those examples and giving it at a very early age, and engaging in that role play, or thinking, as Halloween comes up, I have a friend, her kids don't dress up like characters. They dress up as historic people in history, or dress up as different professions. This is that time to educate and to explore. So my advice to particularly students, come to eye care. It's so nice over here. We want you. You have great mentors and role models, and we will show you the way. Like they say on Power, we will teach you the game. We will do that because we want you to join our profession, because it's fun, because it's fulfilling, because there is a need. And it's an area that, when we talk about being a minority, I say all the time, optometry, ophthalmology, eye care is a minority in healthcare, and we have to amplify its voice as well. And that is the duty of each and every single one of us as professionals, to, if we see things where we're not on that list, or we don't see ourselves being represented, is because we have not been fighting enough as our profession to make sure that it is represented. And so that is what I would encourage our colleagues, but I would encourage students out there. Look into eye care. You know, me and Dr. Kelly, we would love to talk to you all day about eye care. So, you know, our contact information is there, or if you're a student, join these like pre-optometry programs and clubs and mentoring programs that are designed to help you as well. I spoke them into existence.
Hey, look. That's the realest thing you could do on social media. Have a child walk into your friend. It's all good. Dr. Kelly, take us home.
Well, I just want to echo that. We need you. We want you, and we need you. This evening, you have heard the impact that decreased vision has on the quality of your life. And there are so many conditions that African American people are disproportionately affected by. Diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma, burn. We've heard that. And we know that it's powerful. It is absolutely powerful to have African American ophthalmologists that are there in the trenches working. And so the need is real. I think sometimes it seems for some people the road is too long or it's too difficult. It's a road, but there's a roadmap. It's challenging, but we've talked about discipline. But most importantly, there are people who are eager for your success. We are there. We want you to be successful. We need you to be successful. And we want to embrace you into our specialty. And so I just want to leave with what Dr. Johnson said. Just call us, reach out to us. I think there are links for the Minority Ophthalmology Mentoring. If there's anyone in your family, in your church who's interested in healthcare, support them, lead them to resources we talked about earlier. You don't have to be an ophthalmologist. You just have to know an ophthalmologist. So now you know an ophthalmologist, and have support whoever is interested in joining us in healthcare.
Yeah, that's fantastic. The last thing I'd say as we're wrapping up here is don't complain about the time. You say, oh, that's too much work. If you're taking your child to go see a specialty coach to play quarterback or to play defensive back or a hitting coach for baseball or a special training for this, if you're putting in that time, because I know that's what you got to do now. If you want your child to play any kind of sport, you can't just go to sign up and play. You got to do all these, but you're putting in that time. That time could be spent studying. That time could be spent learning about eye health and becoming. So it's about where your priorities are, not in terms of time, because you're going to have to work. If you want to be successful at any profession, you're going to have to give it time and work. And so it's about where you want to put that time. So I'm just going to plant that seed. I'm not saying anybody's doing anything wrong. I'm just saying it's really not about the time. It's about what your child is good at and really pouring into that child, as Dr. Johnson talked about. So that's our time for tonight. I really hope you got out from this program as much as I did. My cup was half full, but it is full now in terms of just being reinvigorated and reignited that fire for trying to create the next generation of eye care specialists. So thank you both for joining us. Thank you all for watching us and giving yourselves a shout out in your comments. We will see you in a month right here on Seeing Eye to Eye.